He was kind of a cheeky man in his day when Kenneth J. Lane was alive and making copies of David Webb jewelry all the time.
All the time.
All the time. There were some good quotes about, like, I thank him for the work he's doing to put out my aesthetic to kind of the masses, right? Because then more people will want David Webb jewelry, which was true. And they kind of had like a frenemy situation.
I'm Carol Woolton, the voice of jewelry. Welcome to If Jewels Could Talk. I'm an author and broadcaster, and the woman who initiated the role of jewelry editor at magazines like Tatler and Vogue. This is a podcast for everyone, for people who do like jewelry, for people who don't realise they like jewelry, and anyone intrigued by fascinating facts, new ideas and forgotten histories. So join me as I tell sparkly tales and meet all sorts of people, delving into 4 centuries of jewellery culture and investigate what's happening now. Welcome to Madison Avenue. We're in New York, in the archives of David Webb, the quintessential American jeweller with a highly original style in modern jewellery, best known for his distinctive carved enamelled animal bracelets that any woman you could think of who was chic in the sort of 50s, 60s wore one. He passed away aged just 50, very tragically, but after this loss, the company has continued producing jewels in keeping with his spirit, imagination and quality, using the archive of 40,000 drawings and design, which we are surrounded about today. We're above the flagship store, and I am delighted to be here with Levi Higgs. Levi, thank you for hosting us.
Thank you for having me. This is great.
So Levi is the archivist at David Webb. I don't often get job envy, but I have to say, looking at the space and looking at what you look at all day is fabulous.
It's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a great place to be.
And you're a decorative art historian trained at Parsons.
Yes.
David Webb said, jewellery, though more personal than painting, should be treated as great works of art, which they surely are. Now, with your training, Levi, I wondered what your views about that.
Yeah, no, that's kind of a big ethos for us here. I mean, we're such a house that's dedicated to design and boldness and color, and I think that really kind of elevates us among, kind of the highest echelon of jewelry as art. And we love that quote. We always bring that quote up, so thank you for bringing it up.
And you see jewellery in the genre as works of art.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, it's the craftsmanship, the sort of reverence that people have for it really, I think, puts it in that category. Yeah.
And he said, why not hang gems? In
Right.
an article he wrote for the New York Herald Tribune. Do any of your clients do that? Did they take that to heart?
Well, people sometimes display jewelry. If you're not wearing your brooch, you can put it in the box and have it out, and people look at it when they come over. Sure, that can happen. Or hang a necklace on a bust or something.
I mean, they are beautiful. They shouldn't be locked away, should they? But
Right.
Unfortunately, people do keep them in vaults. don't
Right.
they?
And we're a brand that has such scale as well, and sometimes that can make people afraid or not have like the courage to wear something big and bold. But the idea of bringing something out of the vault is really about like having the confidence to put it out there, wear it, be kind of a self-aware jewelry wearer and put out your persona through your jewelry. So that's kind of our ideal client like mentality.
But even if they don't hang the actual jewels, the drawings of the jewels are surely works of art.
Right.
They're so beautiful. Did he draw himself?
He did. We have, we know his hand, and he worked on a very particular pad of paper that's like a certain size and a certain type of paper, so we can pretty readily identify, oh, this is a David Webb sketch. He was sort of a colored pencil sketcher. He would just figure out like a very straightforward version of a drawing, and then he had artists that would do full color renderings that were on black and sort of hand painted and more fleshed out. So it was kind of a big production to his idea to final product.
Because you have a few framed here, and clients must frame them and hang those.
We get asked that sometimes. Yeah, if we do special commissions, which we still do, sometimes clients want to have like a copy of their original design. Of course, we keep the originals in the archive just because that's kind of what we need to do. But yeah, we do consider the archive a crux of artwork. I mean, it's such an American archive filled with jewelry renderings that's kind of a lost art these days. I mean, so many people are CADing everything, and
Yes.
which, we love CAD. We use CAD here, but hand painting a jewelry rendering is kind of not done as prevalently as it was.
So I wanted to talk a bit about his life.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a bit about his early influences? He was born in North Carolina, wasn't he?
Right. He was a Southern gentleman. He had family members who made like souvenir ashtrays and were metalsmiths in some regard, not quite jewelers, but they had some sort of handicraft. And he was involved with the Pinland School of Craft as well. Moved to New York very early in his age. He was, I think, 17 when he moved here. It was right around World War II.
And what did he move for?
Well, he wanted to pursue a career in jewelry. He had a lot of different ideas of things that he was interested in. And I think that sort of makes its way through his work later on. Like, he was interested in architecture. He was interested in ancient cultures. And we see that in some collections eventually. But, he came to New York to hit 47th Street and find work and kind of find his sea legs as a jeweler.
So really, he wanted to be a jeweler from a very young age.
I think so, yeah.
And what was his first job?
On 47th Street, in a workshop, I think. And then he eventually connected with the right people to be backers for David Webb Inc., and that started in 1948. So I think from 1942 to 1948, he was working.
But that's pretty quick.
Very quick.
That is very quick.
I mean, that's kind of proof of, like, New York City energy is, like, you connect with the right people and you can rise very quickly.
But people wouldn't have backed him unless he showed an amazing promise and
Exactly.
something unique and original to back.
Right. He must have had work put out that was catching people's eye and obviously the right people's eye. He had a backer named Antoinette Quilleret. She was a French socialite and she was definitely connecting him to the social set of New York.
Oh, that's quite helpful.
Yes. Exactly.
Who you know.
Mm-hmm. And her nickname was Topsy. She was very, like, gregarious and out there. And, you know, someone named Topsy would be very fun, I think. So
So he met her socializing.
yeah, I wish I knew exactly how or in what
But you
setting.
don't know.
But, you know, that's sort of one of those stories that's lost. But
Okay. Was he very good looking, David Webb?
I think he was handsome. He was
Yeah.
tall. He had blonde hair, glasses. We have a few photos of him, not a ton. His insurance policy did not want him to be photographed.
Of course.
Similar to Harry Winston. But yeah, there's some great photos out there of
Because I'm wondering if he was picked up by her socializing, he must have had a presence, a
that could
personal
be.
presence.
Yeah. We don't, I mean, that's something I wish we had in the archive is like his personal voice. We don't have like a ton of letters or journals or anything like that, but everyone who knew him, who we get stories from occasionally, says that he was super fun, very jokey, very charming. I mean, that's the word, charming.
And that can get you a long way.
Exactly.
So shout out to anybody who's got a David Webb story, or
Right.
if they met him,
We
or
want to hear it.
a parent met him. Yeah, you want
We have a lot of people come in and say, I was in love with David. David was in love with me. And we're like, okay. Great.
So he obviously charmed the ladies.
Yes.
He charmed the ladies. That's good. You sort of referenced this a minute ago, that he was very highly cultured.
Yes, I think so. I mean, for being self-taught and from, you know, not a major metropolitan city, he definitely immersed himself in the social set of New York. And, you know, starting the company in 1948, 1950, he's already landing jewelry on the cover of Vogue. Like, that is a swift ascent. And thus,
Because he charmed Diana Vreeland.
perhaps. I mean, she wasn't at Vogue at that time, I don't think, but he knew other editors who, you know, connected him. He educated himself. He cultured himself on going to the Met all the time, collecting books, going antique shopping, and just the clients that he had probably helped educate him as well.
And looking around the archive, I can see a book on all sorts of decorative arts, different periods.
Yes.
It was everything. It was Chinese decorative arts, Regency furniture, gardening books.
Yep.
I mean, moments in history, different periods of history. I mean, it was a really wide interest, wasn't it?
Definitely, yeah. And I think that's kind of what makes it such a uniquely American viewpoint as a brand, is everything that he took in, he amalgamated and turned into something new. And that's kind of the idea of a melting pot nation. Like, that's what America is, I think. So, yeah, I think that comes through in the designs. It's everything that he was fascinated in and interested in, and how could he turn it into sort of a modern vision through the lens of the 60s, 70s, 50s, 60s, 1970s, really.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Because in the book that you published, 2 years ago? Was it the book David Webb?
Yeah, we have 2 books. We have one from 2013 that's sort of the monograph, and then one, I think in 2023. Yeah, last fall it was The Art of David Webb.
Yes. And in that, it showed his interest in the Scythian period, Scythian art, and showed how the influence of a 6th century BCE piece of Scythian goldsmithing came out in a dragon brooch designed in the 60s.
Exactly, yeah.
But there was a sort of a reference point that you could sort of see visually, which is amazing. I mean, do you think he had a particular period that he was fascinated by?
I mean, the thing that immediately sticks out to me is the Jade period. That's sort of early 70s. Nixon's going to China. A lot of fashion editorial spreads are like silks and kind of Asian-inspired fashion. So I see a lot of Chinese influence. I see a lot of carved jade, which he was collecting from antique shops and buying in bulk, which we have a stone room upstairs that has antique jade that he bought personally.
Can we have a peek in that
absolutely,
later?
Absolutely. So yeah, I think that's a huge moment for him. Yeah.
So Chinese art was a big trigger for him.
Sure, yeah.
And how did he live? Did he have all of this around him at home?
He did. There's one article in Vogue in the 60s that talks about sort of his bachelor pad aesthetic, and it was very green. It was garden forward, like a conservatory in his Manhattan townhouse. He had zebra skin rugs, and it was very kind of a groovy bachelor pad. I think he had a lot of Chinese art as well, like vases and things like that. I wish we had more of a catalog of his things. I mean, he passed away in 1875.
So he was only 50.
He was only 50 years old. He had pancreatic cancer. It was super sudden.
So sad, because he probably there would have been more after that.
Absolutely.
And he would have done different interviews, and you would have had a bit more information.
Yeah.
But obviously, a very strong aesthetic. Very strong. That he created. It was original.
Yeah,
just taking, absorbing, and then creating something new.
Right.
Kind of amazing. And then you said he went to the Met Museum a lot. I mean, I read something that he went every day for a little walk around the Met.
Maybe not every day, but probably very often. I mean, the books alone that he had sort of speak to all the different interest points. I would love to have a timeline of Met exhibitions and kind of line them up with, the chronology of works that are coming out of here. And if there were any connections, that would be, something I would love to spend time researching and doing. But he lived in the Upper East Side. The Met's right there, so it makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's so much to see. You have to take it in small bits, don't you? But he was particularly interested in gold objects as well, wasn't he? From the Incas, Egyptian.
Yeah. All those really sort of nuggety gold aesthetics from different cultures he was fascinated by, I think. I mean, you see our textured gold is kind of a hallmark of the brand, and it definitely connects to cultures gone by.
So he tried to recreate that ancient patina.
Yeah, I think so. With a modern lilt to it, yeah.
And did he come up with new alloys to create that look?
I'm not sure about alloys. I mean, we do have kind of a nice...
different techniques to create that.
Sure. I mean, we have 39 different textures of gold that we're able to do. We have all these different chisels, different sizes,
39 is a lot.
39, it's a lot. I mean, some textures are tighter, some textures are kind of long strands. They can be very kind of bulbous looking. It just totally depends on the technique that we want to execute, whether it needs to look like rope or rock or what have you. But that's kind of the skill of the craftsmen upstairs. They're able to do all these different gold techniques, yeah.
And how many craftsmen on the premises in the workshop?
About 20, I think.
20.
Yeah.
This must be one of the only places on the Upper East Side with the workshop.
I mean,
in situ.
To have our boutique, archive, and workshop all under one roof is kind of unheard of. Yes. I don't think there's another workshop on Madison Avenue that I'm aware of. Yeah, it's a total luxury to be able to just walk through the whole house and see what's new, see what's coming out of the workshop, what's fresh, or bring a client through on a tour. We do that quite often.
Yeah, no, totally unique. We don't have that really in London either.
Right, yeah.
On Bond Street, not at all. So, the absolute extremes of interest as well, going from the Incas to the urban environment that was a great inspiration, wasn't it? Wasn't New York itself a kind of muse to him?
Totally. There's definitely a swath of designs that are very geometric, very architectural, that feel like Bauhaus, sheets of glass and concrete, and it feels like the city. Like we have a collection called Manhattan Minimalism specifically for that reason. There's a great photo, like where David Webb is situated on Madison Avenue is right across the street from the Breuer building, which used to be the Whitney, then the Frick, and then the Met Modern. Like, it's been all these different museums. It's soon to be Sotheby's. But anyway, there's a great photo of Jackie Kennedy at the opening of that museum in the 60s. This brutalist, clunky building that everyone loves. And she's wearing this houndstooth coat. And to me, that's like black and white patterning, which we see so much in David Webb's work, geometric design, geometric kind of abstraction. So I think there was quite a moment going on, is what I'm saying, in the city, kind of the zeitgeist of modernism. And we see that through, the jewelry.
And the cross streets.
For the museum.
Yes, that geometric layout of the city.
The grid. Yeah, yes. Definitely.
Were there particular women, you talk about Jackie Kennedy, were there women that he was quite inspired by and designing for?
The archive has boxes and boxes and boxes with special client commissions. Jackie Kennedy, Elizabeth Taylor, Diane von Furstenberg, Vanderbilt's, Rockefellers, you name it. 20th century names, they're in these boxes, definitely, yeah.
What would they buy? The animals? Or
yeah, I mean, people love the animals. He won a Cody Award in 1964, which is kind of like a CFD award these days. It's like a big fashion award. And the award was specifically for his animal jewelry. Gloria Vanderbilt presented him with his award. And yeah, so that was very much like kind of in the public eye of like, this is what David Webb does well, among many other things. But the animals he was very much known for. So yeah, every big client that we go through their invoices, we see animals, whether they like other things as well.
Exactly, but they all had to have an animal.
They all had to have
an animal. So Diana Vreeland had a zebra,
she had a
she?
Zebra. Yeah.
Was that David's favourite animal, the zebra?
It was definitely the most popular, definitely the most produced animal bracelet was the zebra bracelet. Diana Vreeland had zebra earrings to match. We do a zebra ring as well. It's our company logo, so it's definitely...
So it's all enamelled?
Yes.
So his animals weren't made to be demure animals, were they? It was all about power.
Right.
Passion and power.
Yeah, I struggle with this constantly. There's a book we have in the archive called The Big Book of Wild Animals, which is sort of this children's book from the 50s. And I don't think that our animals are like comical or cartoony or fairy tale. I think our animals are this great sort of illustrative style. And it's really kind of indicative from this book, from The Big Book of Wild Animals. They almost look like they'd be painted on a mural in a natural science museum or natural history museum.
So an artistic take on the animal.
Yeah.
More than a literal.
Right. Like, there's obviously some artistic interpretation, but it's not like animals wearing suit coats and Mother Goose kind of style of jewelry. It's a little refined, I think.
And was he a stickler for how they were presented in depicting the animal's coat, i.e. the black and white stripes of the zebra or the spots of the big cats?
Yeah, I think he was able to conceptualize how these coats and pelts would look through new materials, or materials that he was reviving, right? So, like, enamel really hadn't been used since probably the 1920s in jewelry prevalently. I mean, we see Schlumberger using it at Tiffany, David Webb's using it.
Or Jean Toussaint, the big cat.
Sure.
Was that an inspiration?
Sure.
Yeah.
He loved Cartier and Toussaint's work. He idolized her, I think, a little bit.
Did he?
Yeah, there's a quote that, of course, I'm not going to be able to recall word for word right now, but he does mention her by name as someone that all jewelers at this time in the 60s and 70s looked up to. But where I was going with that is you see, like, the gold backing of a piece and then the enamel spots of a leopard, like, it all kind of really fits in with the actual colors of what a leopard would look like the rich gold, the black enamel. So yeah, it's interesting to see how he uses a revival of enamel to create these animals.
And did he travel? Did he go to Africa? Did he see animals in the wild?
I don't know if he ever went to Africa. I would love to know that. We have one newspaper article that talks about rock crystal specifically, and he was at a party and he was talking to Gloria Vanderbilt, and she was wearing like a 1920s rock crystal necklace, and they were talking about how great rock crystal was as a material. And then the article goes on to say that the next day David Webb was boarding a flight to Australia and he was sketching rock crystal designs the whole way. So yes, he traveled. Yes, he was constantly like thinking of ideas. I love the like jet set idea of him on a plane sketching.
It's so nice, isn't it? And rock crystal, I have one on my finger today, which I bought years ago in London. Because he really created, rock crystal's been used in jewellery forever from the Romans, but he created a very modernist take on it, didn't he? Chunky, and setting it with diamonds.
It's very disco to me. It's very like luminous in a way that would work in a nightclub very well. So that's kind of how I think of it. The forms are very voluminous, I think. They're tall rings, they're curving cuffs. They do all this kind of undulation that I think is very 70s.
And who else wore the rock crystal?
Marissa Berenson had a big rock crystal ring, and there's some great photos of her out and about in a plunging dress with rock crystal Maltese cross and I think a cuff. And yeah, she had a great ring with black enamel straps and a big diamond in the middle and rock crystal fluting.
Lucky her.
Yeah.
So she's probably still got that.
Probably still got it. There's a drawing right there on the wall behind you.
Amazing. Yes, it does really, really resonate with that era, doesn't it? Is that something hard you find now from the archives to make that look relevant for now?
No, I don't think it's hard, actually. I think people have a preconceived notion that big jewelry is like granny jewelry, and that is so wrong. And it is flipped on its head very quickly when you put it on a person who's thinking that. You know, you put a big cuff on someone who says, oh no, that's too big for me, I don't think I could ever wear it. The second it closes on their wrist, they're like, oh, hold on. I like how this feels. I like how it looks. Maybe it's not right for everyone. That's fair. But I do think there's kind of a renaissance of jewelry that's very individual, jewelry that positions you as a tastemaker, you know, of your own accord. You're wearing jewelry that's emblematic to yourself. You're kind of creating this like iconography of how you look and how you want to present yourself. And David Webb's a great brand that does that for people. It's individual design that lets women or any client like know how they want to talk about themselves and present themselves. So I think that is connecting with younger audiences, yes. And we strive to have all of our ad campaigns really show kind of the breadth of the designs and how you could wear it casually in a fancy setting as well. So I actively fight that, is what I'm saying.
You think it can just go with any era, any fashion, it will find its place. Yeah. And it's all about the woman, how she chooses it and wears it.
Right, and it's timeless design. I mean, the 60s and 70s aesthetic is kind of always relevant, I find, in some way. Like, you flip through a magazine.
Well, it's modern.
Exactly.
That's it. It always looks modern.
That's it.
Because it's sort of encapsulating that moment where everything changed.
Right. We look through all of our tear sheets from magazines from the 60s and 70s, and we're constantly saying, okay, we want to do a campaign that references this, and all we have to do is tweak one or two things. You know, maybe the hair is different, maybe the makeup's a little different, but the fashions are still very relevant. The way the jewelry is styled is very relevant. So I find a lot of through lines through fashion editorial here.
And how do you choose from the 40,000 designs that you have? How do you choose which to action and recreate and bring back?
I mean, you know, we have a creative director who's one of our owners. His name's Mark Emanuel, and he'll come up with kind of the guiding idea of what is going to be new for a season or something. And he'll come to me and say, you know, I'm making this up. Oh, let's do a butterfly collection. And I'll sort of present him with, okay, here's the 300 great butterfly designs we have. You know, maybe these 25 are ones I really like, and we'll sort of talk about them, and then like a collection could kind of develop that way.
And where does Mark get his ideas? Just out and about, the feeling?
Yeah,
the mood.
I mean, he's so immersed in the jewelry world himself, and he really cares about the brand and knows what's in the archive just as well as I do. So yeah, I think he sees the potential to. There's so many designs here that also have never been produced in the archive. You talk about the 40,000. I mean, I don't even know if that number is right. It could be 100,000 for all I know. Yeah, I mean, there's so many drawings here. Most of which have been scanned, but some of which haven't. So one day when everything is digitized, we'll look at the number and be like, oh, this is the number.
You'll keep me posted on that.
Exactly. It's an ever-evolving number, I'll say.
So then they'll come and he'll say, like, butterflies. You bring out all the butterfly designs. Right. Then you choose a couple to work on. Yeah,
we'll say, oh, this one would work great as earrings, and maybe this is the brooch, and we could, you know, tesserae these to make a necklace, whatever. We just kind of see what works.
It's a sort of group, collective
discussion.
So he was very prolific.
Definitely. That's the
I mean,
word.
he must have been working all the time.
Yeah, the stories of him, like, of David Webb leaving the store and getting halfway home and coming back because he had an idea. He just had to get out and down on paper. So that rings true. I mean, all the drawings here really speak to that.
And how interesting that there are a few there as sort of sleepers who've never been made at all.
Yeah, more than a few, for sure. If I had an array of drawings out, it'd probably be about 50-50 of things that have been produced and things that haven't. So that's
really exciting.
Yeah, it's the wealth of the mine here to go through it and pull out new, quote-unquote, new ideas that are original David Webb designs.
And all the stones you buy from... Are you buying them in New York or different places?
I would say mostly in New York. I'm not super well informed on where we get the stones. We do have a great stone archive. I mean, among other... Yes, we have jade that David Webb collected, but we also have coral and other hard stones, lapis, turquoise. That's hard to get these days. If we need something specific, if we need 25 rubies to fill out something, yes, we'll source them and get them anew. But a lot of what we need or use, we already have. So
That's what I think of when I see David Webb. The coral and turquoise is summer.
Yes.
I think it's summer when I look at David Webb.
Yes.
Joyful. And uplifting.
Yes.
And he had, you referenced Jackie Kennedy, he had a close relationship. He became quite important at that moment, didn't he, as the American jeweler that the presidential... The White House wanted to present him as that.
Right. So Jackie was a personal client, but she was also inspired by going to the Smithsonian, seeing the gems and minerals on display. She loved the idea of sort of a mineral specimen as an object. And she wanted an American jeweler to take minerals native to North America and create desk objects or gifts of state for visiting dignitaries. So that happened in the early 60s during the Kennedy administration. We have... some documentation from the White House, like the Office of Protocol thanking us for giving XYZ gift.
So these were objects?
Yeah, they were sort of desk objects like paperweights, or some of them are clocks, some of them are boxes. They can be sort of different things. And then in 1966, David Webb recreated a lot of those one-of-a-kind objects to make two-of-a-kind, and he sold them as a benefit for the Hospital for Special Surgery. And Jackie Kennedy and the Duchess of Windsor sort of paired to chair this event. So there's a lot of documentation about the second pieces that were made.
And the good they did.
Yeah, and the good they did, exactly. And a lot of those pieces that weren't the original gifts of state, but the copies from 1966, we have in our museum collection. So there's a drawing on the wall back there, too, that says Kennedy with this rocky-looking object. We have that one upstairs. And whenever they come up for auction, we try to nab them. I mean, they're very special pieces, so...
I mean, I was in Palm Beach earlier in the year, and there's so much estate David Webb there. I mean, do you try and buy back special pieces?
We do. Historically, we had a store in Palm Beach when David Webb was alive. Not anymore, but that's a big client base for us is Palm Beach.
Was the original boutique on Madison?
It was not. It was on 57th Street, I think.
Okay.
I mean, it moved around a little bit, but the main one during his lifetime was 57th Street, sort of close to Bergdorf's. And then it was on Park Avenue, and then it was lower on Madison, a few different locations on Madison. And we've only been in this location for 12, 13 years.
Because I suppose in that time, maybe not on the Upper East Side, but 57th, there's been so many changes.
Right. Yes, I think the building it was originally in was torn down 10 years ago, maybe. I watched it happen. It was sad.
I mean, I guess it must be increasingly hard to keep a boutique and workshop in the heart of the city.
Yeah, I mean, we're in this historic bank building, and the Apple store is sort of nestled in amongst us, and they wanted the entire space when they came in. We were here first, and we were like, there's no way we can be displaced. Like, we need all the space for the workshop, the archive, the boutique. So yeah, we're holding on to this location as dearly as possible.
Yes, because you need to be in the heart of what inspired him so much.
Right.
Do you think Mark would ever want to get to the point where he added to the collection, to the designs? Would he want to be inspired himself, or you, Levi, and create something new in homage to David Webb?
Yeah, I mean, we sort of do that now. It's the fine line of like, how can we create something new while still having like the intense brand DNA that we know everything should have. We did a collection a few years ago called Asheville, a nod to where David was from. Yes, and it was a very floral collection, very enamel forward collection. And pretty much every piece that was produced was a quote-unquote new piece, not something that had existed before, but maybe there was a link to the necklace that was, taken from this sketch, and, the flower here was from this drawing. So it was kind of brought to life through what existed, but
new.
It was brand new, yeah. Mm-hmm. And that was the narrative of the collection as well. So that's kind of what we needed to do as a heritage brand, to be like, we're doing something new, but it's based firmly in what we have done. We did an exhibition in 2022 that was slated for 2020. And of course, it had to be pushed a few years. So I would like to do more exhibitions. I'm sort of thinking about what could be next.
And where would you do that?
Well, our first one was here on our premises here. It was our first in-house exhibition. And I don't know. I mean, I don't want to give too much away, but we're thinking about other options.
In the UK or the US?
In the US. Yeah.
In the US. Keep it on home turf.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I mean, I would love for things to be able to travel or have some sort of roving version of an exhibition, but we haven't gotten there yet. And this is just from an archival standpoint of projects that I'm thinking about for the next few years. Yeah.
And a new collection?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of what we've done recently has been focusing on great one-of-a-kind pieces, and we're not even so married to new collections every year, or, they kind of come to us when they come to us, so.
Just as and when.
Yeah.
You don't have to pressure yourselves, because that's something that's changed so much in the last 15 years, that the jewellery brands are on this sort of fast fashion.
Yeah, when you have to hold yourself to the, hold the iron to the fire to meet these arbitrary deadlines or seasonal changes, then it's sort of like everyone just moves on too quickly to be like, oh, did anyone even care about, this thing we did? So we try to keep it very pointed, what we choose to do and put out there. If people have to wait a few years for things, that's all the better for us. Then they're excited about it when it's new.
Now, I'd love to know, Levi, I think people would be very interested to know what you do as an archivist.
Oh, sure, yeah.
And what's a day in the life of an archivist? What does that entail?
So it's a lot of research. I do authentications for the company. So anytime someone brings either a private client or Sotheby's or Christie's or a big auction house or something, people bring in a lot of pieces to have authenticated. So I sort of forensically go through what makes a piece a David Webb piece, and I talk with our foreman.
And what does make a David Webb piece?
Great question. I mean, we have a record of pretty much every piece that's ever been produced. We have all these things we call style cards that are kind of recipe cards for how to make something.
And so what would be on the recipe? Yeah,
it would have the original date of production. It would have a picture of the piece. It would have how many times it was purchased and created. It would have diamond weights, diamond counts, or other stone weights. So we can really kind of check something against the record to be like, is this made the way that it says it should be made? We have all these things that we know we do, like we make screws a very particular way. We set diamonds a very particular way. I can research a piece in the archive with the material and records that are here, and then go upstairs to the foreman, who's also been here a long time. We have jewelers that their fathers worked here. They've worked here since the 60s, 70s. So we have that kind of collective memory, right, as a company. Based on everything that's kind of pooled together for an authentication, we can be like, yes, this is a David Webb piece.
So that takes quite a bit of time.
It does.
So you do the authentication, you do research.
Yeah, I do a lot of writing for the brand, like kind of conceptual things about narrative, about the brand history. If a client is asking about a piece, I'll do sort of a little write-up about, oh, this was made in 1973 and it was in vogue in this year and someone wore it on a red carpet, just to kind of help give a salesperson more information to tell someone about why a piece is interesting or what makes it unique. I do a lot of tours, so clients come to the archive to have tours, take them through the workshop, take them through the boutique. That's kind of a nice experiential thing we do. I would love to have more time to work on projects that aren't necessarily have a timeline. There's so many things I wish I had time to go to the New York Public Library and look through editorials or see things that we don't have here that maybe we should. Things like that.
Cast the net wider.
Just kind of know, did David Webb ever do a radio interview? I don't think so, but I also haven't spent time looking for one, so maybe it's out there, but I don't know.
He definitely would have done a podcast.
Right. He would have done this podcast. You're right, yeah.
And what do you think he would have thought in the way women wear jewellery now? Because it's such a different, the style now compared to when he was creating these jewels. What do you think he would have thought?
He was kind of a cheeky man, so he probably would have had, like, a barb about it to say. In his day, when Kenneth J. Lane was alive and making copies of David Webb jewelry all the time.
All the time.
All the time. There were some good quotes about, like, I thank him for the work he's doing to put out my aesthetic to kind of the masses, right? Because then more people will want David Webb jewelry, which was true. And they kind of had, like, a frenemy situation going.
Yeah.
So it probably would be a comment similar to that of, like, walking into J. Crew and seeing a knockoff David Webb piece or something. I'm making J. Crew up, but, like, the design of David Webb does kind of trickle down into a lot of other things. So
yes. So he would keep his eye on that.
Maybe a little bit. He would be aware of what's going on out there.
But would he have thought, actually, now my work should be worn with jeans?
Yes, he definitely would. Yes. Big gold cuffs and a pair of jeans sounds great to me. White t-shirt. Yeah. Very casual. Yeah. Going to the grocery store,
Yeah, Kenny J. Lane, he was, you couldn't help but love him.
Right.
And he was the first person to admit that he was, taking his inspiration from other people. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you hear chitter-chatter in the background, it's because we are actually above the store and people are coming in.
That's what we want. We do want that.
So do you think people are more appreciative of design now? Because there was a moment where people were just buying big rocks and the stones dominated. Do you think now people have returned to really appreciating design?
I hope so. I mean, I look at auctions all the time. I'm kind of like tracking those trends, and I feel like the pieces that sell and do well are, I think, the pieces that are interesting, that have a historical component or a design element that's interesting. It's not just like the giant deep flawless diamonds. And people are constantly looking for ways to reset those stones or do something unique with them. So I hope we're kind of entering a period of like very individual style that's dominating what people wear. It's not just your ice skating rink diamond that you're flashing around, which is fine, which is great. I'm not bashing that at all, but I think it's nice to have a little bit of a viewpoint with your jewelry. Yeah.
And I noticed actually one of the early designs, which is a screw, a sort of hardware screw in gold that twists the nail. Mm-hmm. Did Aldo Cipulo work here?
Yes. So it's a collection from the early 70s. Aldo Cipulo started his career at David Webb before he went to Tiffany and Cartier. Yeah.
Yes, who did Juste un Clou at Cartier. So he cut his teeth creating the nail piece here first.
There's a new book from a few years ago that's about Aldo Cipulo, and there's a great photo of him and David Webb together, and I think they're at Tiffany. I need to read the caption again, but it was a photo I hadn't seen until this book came out, so that was interesting that they remained friends even after his period working at David Webb. But yeah.
And have you made that recently?
The nail collection?
Yes.
Yeah, it's sort of a great collection that's kind of always in production for us. It's kind of a entry point, price point for us, just being a gold cuff or a gold nail. Yes. We make it, of course, with diamonds as well, but yeah, it's a really important collection for us.
Yeah. And what would you say the other most important collection is?
I think if someone were to, curate the perfect collection of David Webb, they need something with hammered gold, they need something with enamel, and they need something with carved hardstone. Those are kind of our big three pillars of things we do well. And whether the hardstone is rock crystal or lapis or turquoise or whatever, it kind of falls into those three buckets, I think.
After his death, I mean, the brand did sort of languish for a while, didn't it? And it, had some difficult moments.
Yeah.
How do you build a brand back? Because obviously you need a lot of money behind you to do that.
We're super lucky that the brand never closed after his death. So he died in 1975. Nina Silberstein, who had worked with David Webb, her and her family took over, and she was, they ran it for 30 plus years. And then the current owners took over in 2009, 2010. Robert Sadian and Mark Emanuel are the current owners. And they were two people from 47th Street, kind of an estate jewelry background. And they saw the potential, right? They knew that this was a kind of a giant of a name of a company. And because the company didn't have 10 versions of itself, it only had 2 or 3 versions of itself. They were getting it on the 3rd version. There was not a lot of loss. The archives were here. They were messy. They were disorganized, and we had to go through and put everything in the way that you see it now. But like all the intellectual property was here. The molds were here. A lot of the jewelers were still around. So it was pretty well preserved as a brand from that period where we didn't have to create things from scratch. We had all the IP basically. Very lucky. And Mark and Robert saw the vision of like hiring people like me to, help maintain that. And that's what we've done for the last 12, 13 years of like kind of revitalizing, making a David Webb renaissance of getting back to the great original vision.
Well, you've done a great job.
Thank you.
And do you feel his ghost around you? Do you feel he's there, sort of saying, "Yeah, good job, Levi"?
I mean, we often joke about, we should have a seance and see what David Webb thinks about this. I hope that we are continuing to put out a brand that I think is very unique into the marketplace and make it as prevalent as it's able to be without diluting anything, without compromising anything. All of our jewelry is made here in America on Madison Avenue, and I just think we're very focused on like the core of the brand and keeping it really pure. And that kind of gets me out of bed every morning of, when I was a little student, I was like, I want to use history and I want to use it in a contemporary way. Like that is my goal as someone who cares about decorative arts and design and specifically jewelry. And that's what we do here. So
you're in your happy place.
I did it. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Levi, for sharing it with us. And can we go and peek at the jade?
Absolutely. We will. Thank you so much for having me. This was fun. Very fun.
Thank you for listening. For this and other episodes of the podcast, please go to carolwoolton.com. We have a new website, and the book of the podcast, If Jewels Could Talk, is out now in all good bookstores and from Amazon. Do share the podcast any way you can, and we love to have a rating and a comment. And join me again in 2 weeks for the next Jeweled Nugget. We're going to be discovering materials of the old world from Beyoncé's favourite jeweller. So join me then, and thank you for listening. Bye-bye. If Jewels Could Talk with Carol Woolton is produced by Natasha Cowan, music and editing by Tim Thornton, graphics by Scott Bentley, illustration by Jordi Labanda.